Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Thierry Lane, the director of Mekong Center for Strategic Studies of Asian Vision Institute. And today we have a privilege and honor to have four distinguished speakers, panelists from different backgrounds, but they're going to discuss on a very important topics, the same topic, which is Cambodian Economic Outlook 2021. I guess, many of you are very, interested in this, this kind of topic. So this is the reason why we invited these prominent figures to attend, to share their views on how Cambodia economics going to perform as well as has been performing during the previous year as well as this year. So first of all, please allow me to introduce briefly our speakers. And first of all, let me introduce Mr. Nick Beresford, the first speakers. Mr. Nick Beresford, he is the country representative of the UNDP Cambodia. Nick, hello. Yeah, could you please raise your hand? Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah,
I'm
hi.
very pleased to join everybody and welcome to everyone online on Facebook.
Thank you so much, Nick. And the second speaker, we have Mr. Ngo Ravindra. He is the advisor, business consultant, and international speaker in ASEAN 4.0 and World Economic Forum. Mr. Ravindra, hello. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hi,
Thank you
Terrence.
so much.
Nice meeting you. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, and the third speaker, Dr. Chen Kim Long. He is the Vice President of Asian Vision Institute and also the Director of Center for Governance and Innovation and Democracy. Yeah, he has an extensive experience in economics. Yeah, so welcome you on board, Dr. Kim Long.
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, and last but not least, we have Dr. Lai Sok Heng. He is the Deputy Director of Economic Research and International Cooperation Department at the National Bank of Cambodia, or we call NBC. We have the privilege and honor to have you on board, Dr. Sok Heng. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for attending this webinar.
Everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. So before we proceed to panel discussion, please allow me to just give you a bit of broad brush overview of AVI, where AVI come from. I'm sorry, I have to mute something here. And AVI was created 2 years ago, just early 2019. You can say that we are now 2 years old. Yeah. And AVI, we have following mission and vision. Yeah. The vision of the Institute is to, first of all, to impact the positive change through the knowledge co-creation and multi-stakeholder partnerships. The second vision is to build peaceful, inclusive, adapting, and sustainable societies in Asia. The third is to promote Asian wisdom, perspective, and the value of humanities, peace, and cultural diversity in Asia. So in order to realize this vision, AVIs have the following missions. First of all, AVIs want to promote inclusive growth and people-centered development. The second, AVI wish to conduct the practical policy and program research. The third, AVI would like to strengthen multi-stakeholder dialogue and strengthen cross-sectoral partnership and collaboration. The last but not least, AVI wish to advance knowledge sharing and build leadership and innovation capacity. This is the reason why all of you are here. And under AVI, we have five centers, and one of the center is currently I'm in charge, which is Mekong Center for Strategic Studies. And this center's area of research focuses on geopolitical and geoeconomic analysis with a particular focus on the Mekong region, Cambodia foreign policy, great power politics, small state diplomacy, human security, and ASEAN. And its flagship event is the annual Mekong Strategic Forum, which aims to conduct geopolitical and geo-economic mapping of the Mekong region, promote regional cooperation in addressing human security, and deepen regional economic integration and connectivity. Yeah, these are the broad brush overview of AVI backgrounds. So please allow me to a little bit about the rule of the panel discussion today. As perhaps they already mentioned to you briefly before, that this is a freestyle panel discussion. So, but the first session will be, will be moderated by myself, which is the four panelists, and will be moderated by me. I will ask the question, and the four panelists will answer the question. So I will post the question, and then I will ask, each of you to answer the question. However, you are free to jump in to share your view at any time you feel convenient or you feel the need to. Yeah, this is session one. After the session two, we will open the floor for the online participant to ask you the questions. So again, I will pick up the questions from the online participant and ask you. Yeah, these are the brief rules of the today panel discussion. The last but not least, I think I should also mention is that I really apologize for to all of you as well as the online participant that Dr. Soksipana, who is the chairman of the Asian Vision Institute, could not make to today's event given his sudden illness. So, but I really wish him a speedy recovery. And if he's fine, he's in good shape. I think he's really very active. He's very active in the panel discussion as well as the webinars. Yeah, he really wanted to join today's event, but he could not make it. So again, thank you all for your participation today. Without further ado, so I would like to start our discussion now. Okay. So first of all, I would like to ask the question to Mr. Beresford. So the world economy has been badly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. So in what ways has the pandemic affected ASEAN economies? So Mr. Beresford, the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think it is worth stating the obvious that Cambodia has had a remarkable success on the health side. You know, if we look at incidents of transmission, they've been very, very small in number, and it's been very, very well contained. And I start with that point because I think you cannot separate the health from the social and economic. You know, and I think this was a mistake actually that some countries had to learn a hard way. But so, you know, maintaining the safety of the population and making sure that we very quickly control any outbreak that does occur is actually your smartest economic your economic policy. Okay, that having said that, of course, I think the shock that has come to Cambodia and also to its neighbors, because we maybe escaped some of the health ravages that other countries have experienced, but we have not escaped the economic consequences. You know, this is a very open economy. It's very dependent on trade, and it's been very successful in that respect. You know, it's had tremendous growth rates of 7% over the last 15 years or so, and that's really been the big hit. It's what's unusual about this is also it was to some extent a supply shock as well as a demand shock. And that's made it quite complicated, I think. It's more of a classic demand shock, but it's certainly at the beginning that this was the case. We did a lot of work early on with Ministry of Economy and Finance and modeling the shock. And in fact, because we were already working on a CGE model with MEF, we were able to give some estimates of what we thought was going to happen to the economy last year and into the beginning of this, you know, and our model showed a decline in GDP of minus 4.11%, but also very substantial increases in poverty. because of the uneven distribution. And I think that that story, it's actually what's actually happened has been a lot better than we've expected. I think if we look at the economic and the social results that we've seen, the reason they're a lot better is also because of Cambodia was very quick to put in a stimulus package, including, and most importantly, a cash transfer program. And that cash transfer program, we're evaluating it right now. We're working with the CSES data, with Ministry of Planning and others. So we're actually going to have a look at the, the results, because CSES goes into the Cambodia Social Economic Survey goes into 2020. But our model, it suggested that the stimulus with social protection, not only did it make sure that poverty, that the increase in poverty was reduced by 3 or 4%, but also economic growth was much better. We got an extra percentage of economic growth from that. Why is that? That's because as well as protecting those who are most vulnerable, people who are most vulnerable spend all their money. They spend it in the local market. They have a high economic multiplier effect. So this is actually quite a smart policy intervention. So, coming back to your general question, I'm focusing particularly on Cambodia, but I think, what could have been much, much worse, I think, was averted because of smart and timely interventions in terms of stimulus spending, and particularly by social spending on social protection.
Thank you, Nick. So, since you mentioned, so anyone would like to share what Nick just said about regarding the Cambodia economic performance? I think Dr. Sokhein, you would like to share something regarding the government stimulus package. So I think since you are at NBC, so I think you know a lot about what are the policies have been rolled out by the Cambodian government recently. So are there any policy that the government has been rolled out recently to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic? Dr. Sokhein.
So thank you very much. So so I agree with Mr. Beresford in terms of the stimulus package provided by the government. So it's a very, very helpful and timely in order to support the economy, because although the growth has been contracting, as he mentioned, around 4%. And it's true, without the stimulus package, probably the growth rate could decline further, much further on that. So it's really important that the government provided this package. And as it has, I think most people already know what kind of policy package that the government has provided, including the tax exemption, as well as the cash transfer to worker. One thing that I would like to highlight in terms of the stimulus package, the central bank also has some kind of a measure in order to support the government policy as well as to support the economy. So in terms of liquidity easing, that is one point that the central bank has been doing in order to support financial institutions so that they have more liquidity in order to inject into the economy. So one example that I would like to raise here is the reserve requirement ratio, which has been reduced. So this will allow the bank to have more liquidity, more fund for the borrower. And this is really important during this pandemic period, because bank need this liquidity in order to support the economic activity. So then this will help banks to have ability to lend more to their clients during this pandemic, as well as during the recovery period. I think I would like to raise this one point here on top of what Mr. Beresford has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sokhein, for your sharing on the economic policy put forth by the Cambodian government. in response to the in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So now the question, the third question. I think I would like to ask Dr. Kim Long. So with regard to the sectors that likely affected by this pandemic. So according to your observation, what are the sectors that mostly affected by the pandemic crisis in Cambodia? Dr.
Thank you
Kim
so
Long?
much. I think our two speakers have mentioned about what government have been doing to support and what the worst scenario could be. Among the major economic foundations of the country, I think tourism has been hit the hardest. If you look at the international arrivals coming to Cambodia, it started to decline so much, and leading to the end of 2020, that the number of tourist arrival, international tourist arrival, due to the travel restrictions, country lockdowns, not only by the country, Cambodia never locked down the country, but some other countries, they locked down, they restricted, they limit the travel and movement of the people in the efforts to contain the spread of the virus. That has the spillover effect on the country. And then the tourism sector in Cambodia has lost so much. If you look at 2018, the tourism sector that contributed about 30% to the GDP. And back in 2019 and 2020, that particularly 2020, from January 2020, we see almost 90% of tourist arrival has declined. Not only that, not only the tourist sector, the tourism, which is one of the main backbones of the economy, we can see the manufacturing sector, particularly garment exports, has declined, has been affected. Agricultural production has also been affected. On economy-wide, many main economic sectors of the Cambodian have been affected, but some sectors have been affected the worst. So let me try to summarize that. The tourism sector has been hit the hardest, followed by the manufacturing, the industry sector. But at the same time, we can see some changes, in the composition of the Cambodian economy, particularly the exports of non-garment grew instead. The export of bicycle to our main international markets grew dramatically, and then the exports of the other electronic products, assembly. Parts, spare parts have also went up. So despite the negative impacts, by COVID-19 and also the economic fallout caused by pandemic, sectors have been hardly hit, but some sectors fare quite well. You see, if we look at another sector is real estate and construction. The investment flow into the country started to dry up only from the second semester, but from the first semester we saw the momentum in the investment in the sector and also the flow. But leading from the second semester to the end of I think until now, the foreign direct investment into real estate sector, construction has also declined. I think we will talk further. In the coming up debates on how can we do just to avoid the negative impacts. Later. Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Kim Long, for your interesting answer to the questions. So now we go to Mr. Ravindra. So I think that you have a lot of experience in dealing with the private sector. So I think the question will be involved with the private sectors mostly. So, in your opinion, what are the most concerning issues for the private sector, especially during this pandemic periods? So, Mr. Ravindra, could you please?
Yeah, so I guess the private sector have a key role to position it itself. I think working in collaboration with other parties such as government, obviously, and also I think that Cambodia mainly have also now recently an ecosystem with a lot of a startup and knowing also the demographics that 70% are around 25 years old. I think that this is something that obviously the private sector have a key role to play. I think that also so first cooperation with government. Then also, I think the private sectors recently with two different trade who has been involved. First, the one with China, with the China bilateral trade free trade agreement, and the second one with RCEP, which is more ASEAN regional scope. I think that private sectors will be really solicitate to push on the economic recovery, and I think that within that different sectors that Dr. Cheng has been mentioned, tourism. I know that recently the government also tried to support the tourism back on track within the Vision 2025. This is something I think in line with government strategy. But other private sectors area, I think, should be working closely hand to hand with others parties, should be obviously also the government sectors. And I think that lastly, agricultural sectors also is something that who can really promote the Cambodian economic recovery, especially with the implementation of innovations and also digital transformation.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Ravindra. You mentioned about the role of agriculture in maybe in the context of the pandemic. So I wonder how could agriculture contribute to the say the restoration of or economic recovery of Cambodia? So could you please just give a little bit of example how? Thank you, Mr. Ravindra.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that again, so agriculture, I think that it's first is obviously a key pillar for her GDP. Secondly, the potential of agricultural land, and especially I think the green part, which green agriculture, which means the one who has not been under pesticide or used as a chemical product. So I think that agriculture could play a key role. Also knowing, as I mentioned before, with all the immediate benefits of the Cambodia-China free trade agreements, especially with the export high value with raw and processed agricultural products such as cassava and soybean. So this is something that we should promote. And also, secondly, I've heard that China has already provided quotas for Cambodia's rice and mango export. So this is also something we should understand. And then I think that speaking about agriculture, we're moving from mainly a potential from manual now to technology. So I think that technology should be also implemented in the agricultural sectors, such as tracking mainly the different needs from the stores, but technology also can be used for the remote areas. I think that has been really affected by the pandemic. So these are mainly the different points that I think it is important to take in consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Ravindra. Yeah. Is there anyone would like to contribute further to what Mr. Ravindra just said? Mr. Beresford, please.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think when we're, Dr. Kim Long mentioned the success of bicycles, and Mr. Ravindra mentioned, the China Free Trade Agreement. We've seen, and a lot of this I think comes together with the opportunity to diversify. If I go back to your first question about, why did the economic hit hurt as much as it did? It's also because we had quite a narrowly based economy, and it happened that the economic effects of COVID was to hurt those particular industries where we were in, but we weren't as diversified as some of our neighbors, like Vietnam, for example. So every crisis is an opportunity as well as a crisis. There are positives as well as negatives in that. I mean, I'm not playing down the COVID crisis any means, of course not, but using the opportunity of the crisis to then see, what can we do? And I would say that diversification is a key strategic opportunity, and then I think also Mr. Navindra hit it on, you hit it on the head, where diversify into what? Well, I think it's the new technology, it's a new digital technology, and bringing these in, I think we're going to be seeing huge demand for electric vehicles, for batteries, for energy storage. People want more and more organic food, safe food, as you just mentioned. So these are all kind of markets that are out there globally, which Cambodia could be very well positioned to get into, being a smaller niche player, in this. So yeah, I would emphasize the importance of diversification in that respect.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Sukhay, Dr. Kim Long, would you like to provide further input into this?
Yeah, I like to add a little bit on top of what Mr. Ravindra and Mr. Beresford have mentioned. I think they mentioned the innovation, the technology, and the economic diversification. I think those are very important points. Now let me look into agricultural sector. The improvement in productivity is very important. The main economic fundamental in pushing the Cambodian economy could be tapping on the potential in the agricultural sector. We have a huge amount of agricultural land. But recently, we only around 2.5 million hectares have been used in agricultural production annually. And to some extent, in some years, because of drought, because of flooding, because of natural disasters, up only to around 2.2 or 1.9 million hectares of agricultural land have been employed. But we have to improve productivity in three parts. One is in land. Second thing is in capital, which is in technology. Yeah. The third thing is in labor. It's a labor productivity in agriculture as well, because all of the three productivity should be combined, should be embedded to promote the efficiency. Efficiency is one, but it's not the only target. It's not the only strategy we aim for. But improving land use, there should be a priority to consolidate some fragmented pieces of land so that farmers can easily employ technology at a much lower cost, and at the same time they save a lot of time. Technology is one. It is one thing. Innovation is one, but improvement in how land can be consolidated, managed, and used in a single large plot that reduce the cost and time in improving, in managing the land, in improving land, for example, in cultivating, all of those. And then they apply technology as well as the diversifying crops, products, agricultural crops, agricultural products. And the questions about why agriculture is the main backbone of Cambodian economy and also one of the resilient sector of the economy. You look at the Cambodian population. At least 65% of Cambodian peoples are still engaging in agriculture on a kind of daily basis, and they rely on agriculture as a source of income. When internal shock, external shocks hits like this one, when a global pandemic hits, people still, at least 65% that are engaging in agriculture benefits from agriculture. They rely on agriculture as two things, as a source of income and a source of food. And then they are the supplier of food sources for people, no matter what, whether in very peaceful moment, whether it is in war, people still eat. And, it's a food security is very important here. And food security is one dimension, but the improvement in the productivity for people to particularly, the agricultural sectors to benefit farmers, benefit producers, and also, the surplus of which is to supply to the international markets as a source of income for farmers and for agribusinesses inside the country. And looking forward, possibly 2021, we will see a growth in agricultural productivity, but that have to come in a package of government's intervention while promoting Industrial 4.0 or in technology and innovation, but innovation into agriculture, into agro-processing, agro-business. And also, the not only processing, but also the storaging, the logistic networks, all of those leading to the international markets. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Kim Long. Apparently, agriculture play a very important role for Cambodian economic recovery. So I just wonder, what are the other sectors that Cambodia has a strong potential to develop in the post, pandemic recovery? Dr. Sokhay, what do you think about this? Dr. Sokhay?
All right, thank you for the questions. And first of all, I'd like to echo what Dr. Kemblong has mentioned about the important roles of agriculture, especially during this COVID pandemic, as we can see that people need food. And during the pandemic, we have a disruption in importing of basic food from neighboring countries and other countries. So, and then the domestic supply play important role. So then we need food. And as you can see, the share of agriculture in economy has been declining, the share of agriculture in terms of GDP, because industry services has been dominant. But because of the important role here, as you can see, agriculture remain strong and stay in a strong momentum. So I think that it is important that we should encourage more and diversify our product and improve our productivity, as our previous speakers has already mentioned. Another area that I think we could look into is technology. I think during this pandemic, so travel has been disrupted, and then people work mostly from home. And how do they communicate? Technology, infrastructure is important. Well, that's the area that we should focus on. So when people work from home, when we have good internet connectivity, and then it is easier for us to communicate all those kind of travel restriction, or we cannot go to our office, or we have work in shift work from home, and then it's easier, we still maintain our productivity. And I think in line with the government policy, as I think in the previous year, the government has paid attention to the industrialization and technology. So IO 4.0. So the area that we should improve now is the infrastructure. So technology infrastructure, that's what I mean. So we need a better connectivity. So then if we have all this good infrastructure in place, it's easy for other area to improve too. For example, this day, you can see some kind of a new service that coming up. I think Mr. Ravindra may have better idea in terms of a fintech startup. So then with good infrastructure, so then more technology companies is coming in and they are starting. So let's look at a basic example of a kind of a transportation. So with the new investment, then people can, they just need an apps on their phone, and then they can ask for a ride from a taxi or tuk-tuk easily. That's one basic thing that has been improved so far, and it's cost efficiently. So, and then more convenient for people. And another new area that has been coming in, as we can see, it's on a kind of retail supply of food, or kind of this startup. You see, they you can just use your phone, and then the food will come to your door, and you order it. And yeah, so with all of the good infrastructure, good internet connection, I think one thing that people are mostly interested in is that the payment. So the use of payment. Okay, so you can see now you can transfer money easily anywhere, and cost efficient. It's very efficient. So if you have stable, good internet connection, and then yes, you can make payment easily, and then it's reduce a lot of cost. And as I think everyone is now has their kind of a banking apps in their phone, and then they don't need to bring cash with them. They can pay for goods and service in the store. And this also help, because you know we are trying to have social distancing, and you don't need to contact, you don't need to hold cash, because it may be you touch it, many people touch it, and it's safe. You just use your mobile apps, or you use any apps, and then pay through, for example, QR code. It's very convenient, and you don't need to touch on your money, and it's very helpful in that way. So that's what I want to add on top of that. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Ravindra, please.
Yes, I just want to add also with Dr. Lexok, so which I totally agree, and that he mentioned something very important, which is obviously the digital part, and Industry 4.0, and especially with the fintech sector. You're right. I think that it's something, you know, not only in Cambodia, but we have a different model already existing with our neighbor countries. But in Cambodia, I think that you know, the digital payment service, as you mentioned, Dr. Lexok, is that quite booming. I think there is in 2019, if I do remember, around 20 payment service, including PPay, I think Wing Money and GrabPay, and among others. But I think that these sectors, fintech, digital banking, are really growing rapidly, and also giving you an example. The central bank has launched its own digital currency and payment system using blockchain technology with Bakong. So this is a very more than a national example. This is a regional example, as emerging countries can really prevail and support financial inclusion. But more than that, especially during that time of crisis, I think contactless solutions avoid also disease transmission. So I think this is really an example how using tech for goods.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I think you're touching upon a very interesting aspect of digital technologies. I myself, to be honest, I'm not sure about, I'm quite illiterate in terms of digital technology, but I can observe that many, Cambodia has made a very significant progress in terms of, adopting technology very recent in the recent years. Yes, yeah, as you can see, as Dr. Sokheng and other speaker mentioned about the adopting the banking, net bank, internet banking, for example. Yeah, many people now knows how to, like transfer the money back and forth using this kind of technology. I myself didn't know at all before, but now I have to adopt it and I found very convenient. Oh, I think Mr. Beresford, you would like to share with us something? Yeah, Mr. Beresford, the floor is yours now, please.
Yeah, I'm really glad to that Mr. Navindra mentioned the Bakong platform and the blockchain, and I didn't know why Dr. Sokheng was being very modest by not mentioning it, because the National Bank of Cambodia has been a real powerhouse, I think, in coming up with innovative ideas and really driving forward, I think, digital money and being very creative, and also in the response to COVID as well. You mentioned the monetary easing and the lowering of the borrowing requirements and so on. So I think that that's a great example of the move, the opportunities of this digital technology. A lot of the work that we do at the UN and UNDP on e-commerce and investments in e-commerce try to build on this. We're helping a lot of businesses now get onto e-commerce platforms, basically by subsidizing the cost for very small businesses, because sometimes they lack some of the skills to manage it, but they are also a little bit conservative. They're not sure whether it's worth it. Maybe I just sell my goods on my Facebook page. And we're saying, no, go more into this new technology and try it out. Our theory, our hope is that some of these businesses will actually flourish on there. They won't need a subsidy for us to continue because they'll be making profits. So I think this is definitely a sector to be encouraged. But the point I wanted to make was the thing I keep hearing back from private sector colleagues, friends, and when I'm in the chambers of commerce and so on, is the difficulty with finding the staff with the right skill sets. There's a real need to invest in building, human capital. It's a bit of an ugly phrase, human capital, but I mean, it really comes back to this basic need to strengthen educational investments and also to strengthen skills investments, because it really comes down to the people at the end of the day that are really, can this digital transformation work to the full extent that we wish to see it work. We've got a very young country still. The recent demographic survey shows that that's starting to change, and that within the 2020s, we're going to start to see an aging factor come in, but we still got this, this youth bold, this youth dividend, so making those investments, I think, to make sure that young people are coming out of school, they're finishing high school, that the quality of the education keeps improving, and that we invest in programs that allow them to get these skills, particularly information technology skills. I think it's a key to, can Cambodia catch this wave? Can it make this happen? Yeah, that's one point I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. You mentioned interesting aspect about at least reskilling. Reskilling something in the Cambodian economy is crucial. Do you agree that the Cambodia should focus on reskilling something in order to, respond to COVID-19 pandemic crisis, especially in the areas of, say, digital technology? So should I direct this question to Mr. Beresford? More or less, you touch upon this. So Beresford?
We did a piece of work just at the beginning of this year, actually, which looked at the Human Development Index. And the Human Development Index is not just GDP, but it looks at health, it looks at education, a bigger picture of human well-being. And Cambodia's had this fantastic story for like last 15 years or something. It's not just the GDP that went really well. It was human development that went really well. Look at longevity, look at health outcomes, look at education. You know, education maybe not as strong as the others, but improving. And together, it's been really it's been a remarkable story, a remarkable success story. But when COVID came, it really hit these numbers back. And we were really interested to try to understand more fully why human development seems to be hit so hard, more so than in neighboring countries in our region. And as we did the analysis, what we really found was that the thing that really hurt was the hit to education. And it's something you don't immediately see because, of course, school kids are not, well, I hope not, economically active. You know, they're not part of, but they're part of the future economy, of course. You know, so you've got a kind of time lag effect of what this is doing. But you do pick it up in Human Development Index. And a Human Development Index lag suggests to us about a 4-year loss in human development, because mainly coming from the education side. And it's happening because of the school closures. And also it touches on another point that Dr. Sok Heng mentioned, you know, was the investments that we need in bringing the internet to everyone. Because unfortunately, many kids or many families not being online, it was much more difficult for Cambodia to flip to a home learning system. You know, other countries were able to do this in response to COVID more easily. So, I mean, I think this piece of research kind of, to me, indicates, you know, reinforces, I think, this, you know, this need for this fundamental, stronger investments in improving the quality of education, having less kids drop out of high school, making sure that high school education improves, and that we encourage more to go into tertiary, and that we bring in, you know, the skills that you just mentioned, you know, IT and others. But this is a very strong role for government. This is where I think I see government as the main player in making this work. You know, just as we said it right at the beginning, you can't separate the health aspects of COVID and the economic aspects of COVID. You know, they're completely joined at the hip. I think you cannot separate these investments in people, and particularly in children and their education, from your future economic trajectory and your ability to move up value chain, your ability to capture, you know, digital technology and to move it forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Beresford. Dr. Kim Long, now I come back to you. I think more or less you mentioned about the certain sectors that potentially could experience growth during this pandemic. So could you elaborate a little bit further, say, beside digital technology, so what are the other areas that you can see that Cambodia can potentially, you know, reap its benefit, or can actually experience the growth, especially during and after the pandemic crisis, according to you?
Well, you know, we have to acknowledge the importance of digital technology, innovation, high, you know, advanced technologies in the promotion, you know, of the Cambodians, you know, reintegration and integration in the regional and global economy, particularly in, you know, the regional and global supply chains. You know, in all of those, you know, as governments is improving its capability, particularly in terms of governance, economic policy governance reform. But looking into the area that the Cambodian government is trying to, you know, promote, that leverage, is, you know, two things. One thing is the demographics, the young Cambodian labor force, that particularly in some areas, we do not need really, you know, high-skilled workforce, but a workforce that support, for example, like assembly lines. Those are spare parts. You know, they don't need those much advanced technology or advanced skill, but I cannot play down the importance of providing, improving the skills, creating platforms for people, for young Cambodian labor force to improve their skill in order to be able to be employed or re-employed. You were mentioning about reskilling, you know, for them to to join the labor force in the emerging sectors of the Cambodian economy, particularly as the Cambodian government is trying to attract domestic as well as foreign investments in the assembly line, you know, in the we call assembly, we call spare parts, manufacturing, light industries, not really advanced industry, because you know, we have a large pool of young labor force, and then providing skills to them, you know, from low to semi-skill to advanced skill, it really takes time. It really takes time. So the government see this one, and that's why you see in the coming updated investment law, we will see a section on promoting this assembly line, the spare part and the light industry, as well as the skill development, just for a portion of Cambodian labor force that cannot go to high tech, that cannot go to the digital technologies. So the production, the manufacturing of these, you know, products will be, you know, you will see a growth in investment and in production, and then also export of these. In addition to this is production of the other, you know, non-garment, non-textile industry moving forward, you know, because we cannot rely on garment industry in a much longer term. I mean, maybe 20 years from now, possibly the garment sectors will not be able to survive given the rising wage rates. So the other areas should, you know, come up and be promoted quickly. And then it comes to the idea of diversification of the products and the diversification of the export markets. So this is one. Second thing is the linking to agriculture and technology and innovation is the food processing. Food processing, not only food for human, but food for animal, you know, animal feeds, you know, and then the agricultural products that serve non-food sectors, that serve the other industrial sector, we call industrial crops, promoting also the productions of or the promotion of crops that serve the benefit of medical industry, for instance. Why don't we try to you know, redefine the priority in the agricultural, in agro-industrial sector in the Cambodian economy, you know, which part of the country that is suitable for this crop for food, crop for non-food, crop for you know, medical research, crop for medicines. You know, a lot of medicines these days have been you know, using timber on, you know, on non-timber forest products or the other non-food agricultural products. And technology will need to be you know, to come in. They need the private sector to come in. They need, you know, private sector, I mean domestic one, and also from the regional country, from the regions, from our partners, and then come up with, you know, in the free trade agreement, where it is bilateral or multilateral trade agreements, just to ensure, you know, the sufficient and the unobstructed flow and supply of goods and services, that all of those will be, you know, will be I say pro-poor, you know, growth strategies. It will be pro-poor, and also we, you know, as Mr. Bradford say, everything is like it's a come back to people at the end of the day. That's why we have to factor in technology, but also we look at some other segment of the societies of the you know, labor force is one that I mentioned. We cannot leave them behind, but the digital technology, advanced technologies are necessary to support the industrial sector, to support the the digital economy, not only for the Cambodian economy, but also, you know, the digital connectivity between Cambodia to the Mekong, Cambodia and ASEAN, and Cambodia and the other, you know, trading partners on a wider scale. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim Nok, for your elaboration. So now back to Mr. Ravindra. I think more or less you mentioned about the roles of the free trade in, you know, like economic recoveries of Cambodia as well as the whole region. I just wonder how those free trade agreement, for example, say Cambodia-China free trade areas or regional comprehensive economic partnership contribute to the economic recovery of Cambodia and the region. Could you please? The floor is yours now, Mr. Ravindra.
Yes, so if I do understand, you ask me how the
Yes.
different trade and regional agreement can prevail to the development of Cambodia. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so in that way, as I have mentioned earlier. So first, I think that also what Dr. Cheng has mentioned about the different key growth industry within also economic development and contribution to the growth of economy in Cambodia post-COVID is very important. I just want, before answering your question, to add this. I think there is also two limitations that is important that I add to Dr. Cheng, is that the first limitation is on the digital part, on the innovation part, is also all the regulations. I think that this is something we should also think about. Means that how we can really implement, and this is mainly perhaps the role of government and private sectors, how we can really implement a legal framework for data security. This is something I think we should. I'm really want to pinpoint right now. Otherwise, I think I will forget. But this is a very important point to really draft or give a really first national legal framework for data security. And I'm sure, I think the government have already in their visions, especially with the national rectangular strategy. I think is part of the pillar within how to strengthen human capital and lifelong learning within, I think, the digital and for IR, which I think that they cover digital ID and entrepreneurship for fourth industrial revolution. So this is, I think, the first things I want to mention. And I think the second one, I think digitalizations has been also a leverage recently for attracting all the FDI, foreign direct investments, because the government has also accelerated the process through a digital platform to really reduce the time for a company to register. So that's also another point, how using digital for goods. But now answering your question about all the free trade agreements, I know that especially, I think was last November's, Cambodia have signed with China and have really signed different deals, especially one with the agricultural sectors, again with the mangoes and different quotas for bananas as well, for all the organic products in that area. But also the second free trade agreement, I think they are still in discussion, is with Korea. And I think the main, I think, accelerator within the post-pandemic era is obviously the regional comprehensive economic partnership, who's not really beneficial about Cambodian economy, but I think really benefits also about Cambodia as a regional integration within ASEAN, and not only within ASEAN, because China and also North Asia, including Japan and South Korea. I think that is something within the next few years we really help Cambodia economy to recovery. But I think that, and this is perhaps something we can discuss later, obviously there is different parameters to take in consideration. First, I think it's the vaccine efficiency. Secondly, how different measures will help to recover. This is something I think we can talk and discuss later. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ravindra. So, Dr. Zakhay, you have any further inputs into this?
Yeah, well, I just recap on one important point. I think Mr. Ravindra mentioned earlier in his remark about the private government partnership. And I'd like to highlight on the important role of the private sector again in order to sustain growth. Yeah, so one thing that we need more new startup. Yeah, so and entrepreneurship is important too. And if we have all of this, I think we can create more value. Especially, I think we, in terms of agriculture products that we highlight earlier, we have rice, we have cassava, probably we have many others products, but those are unprocessed. So it's really difficult to take it to international market. So if we have a startup, a new startup firm, new entrepreneurship, and then those will help to add value to this one. And another thing is the job creation. I think during the pandemic, some people may lost job, especially those in the government factory work, government sector. So then if we have more startup, I think we would be able to provide more jobs to the people, especially in agricultural sector. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sokhaeng. So now I think I'm moving to the next questions if you don't have further inputs. So as you all know, perhaps know that some developed countries, including the EU, have successfully developed the vaccines. So do you believe that this kind of developments, I mean the development of the vaccine will be the only key to bring back the global economic recovery? I think it's the only way to to bring back the economic recovery. I think this question should be start with Dr. Sokhaeng. Can you answer this question?
So one short answer is that I am optimistic with the vaccine. I believe that this is the only way that help to bring back the economy in the next maybe few years. I'm not so sure, but yes, I'm really optimistic about this, and I think that everyone is waiting for that.
Yeah, as you know, I think perhaps I happen to come across with some new headlines stating that the variant of the virus has been developed too. So perhaps the vaccination somehow show some limited efficacy. So in this case, if the vaccine never be developed successfully or never proved 100% effective against the COVID, so in this case, will the world economy be will the world economy be on the right track to develop? So I think I would, Mr. Beresford, could you please answer this question?
I agree, actually, with Dr. Sokhaeng that we're seeing very encouraging signs from the development of vaccines, and that's great. But I'd also stress that we already have good ways to deal with COVID. Wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands. Do these things, and these are very effective ways of limiting transmission. And where outbreaks do occur, swift and decisive action to prevent transmissions from spreading. And yeah, I think, we've also seen encouraging signs of, well, how do I put this? I think there are encouraging signs and there are less encouraging signs on the vaccine. I think, first of all, nobody is safe until no one is safe until we're all safe. That we're in this together globally, and this is an undisputable scientific fact. So the vaccine nationalism is not only a huge moral and ethical failing, but it's also, I think, it is naive, to say the least, because it's going to come back to haunt you, and yeah, we've seen this throughout the millennia, I would say, not just with this particular outbreak. But on the optimistic side, I'm very pleased to see that, with the COVAX facility, with Gavi, with the work of WHO and with UNICEF, the strong support of the Ministry of Health and the Royal Government here as well, that this is, this aspect is coming together. And the more that we can cooperate to ensure that these vaccines are rolled out and made available to everyone, and then focusing on those with the highest risk, people with pre-existing conditions and so on, these are the sensible ways to make the best of this situation.
Thank you, Mr. Beresford. I think I come up with other questions regarding the vaccines here. I think you know very well what happened in Europe, that they have developed some successfully some vaccines to Pfizer. So in this case, I wonder, what what role can the UNDP play in order to help with bringing those vaccines to Cambodia or other poor nations? Because without those vaccines, as you said, the economic recovery perhaps will be hindered. So you see any potential role that UNDP as well as other international institutions can play in this regard?
I'm very pleased and not a little proud to acknowledge the work of the WHO in Cambodia, of course, with the direction and the leadership of the Ministry of Health. And I think they've had this fantastic close working relationship that has that's been a key pillar of the success that we've seen in this country in the management of COVID. UNICEF also has a very important role to play in terms of the COVAX facility, so that UNICEF and WHO working together with the Ministry of Health's leadership and guidance, this is the way to roll out the vaccines in the most efficient and effective way. UNDP is not directly involved in this effort. We are in India, Indonesia, and some other countries where we have a system called EVIN, which was an electronic value chain, cold chain, I should say, a cold chain system. And it automatically checked that vaccines were kept at the right temperature. So it's kind of like an Internet of Things application, so that at each stage, the lorry, the fridge, the container, whatever, would send a signal that was picked up by EVIN, and EVIN would make sure, because of course, you need to make sure that not only when you use the vaccine, that the vaccine is actually going to work, and it's only going to work if it's been properly stored at every single point along the supply chain. And whether we'll be able to put this system here in Cambodia I'm not sure at the moment. But I mean, but suffice to say that the UN, it has fully committed to supporting the royal government and the people of Cambodia through this crisis. Both on the health aspects, but also on the social and the economic aspects. From the UNDP side, we've been more involved in the social protection, the work with MEF on the economic analysis and response to it. I mentioned a little bit about e-commerce and trade. We're very involved in these kind of issues. So that's the side that UNDP's been more involved. But the UN as a whole, has been involved very heavily, across that spectrum.
Thank you, Mr. Beresford, for your elaboration. So I think we have come to an end of session 1. So I I'm pleased to hear all your very interesting answer to the question. So I think now we're moving to the session 2, which is a Q&A from the audiences. So the first question, let me read to all of you. Okay, this question is from Yang Muniodam. Yeah, he asks. Oh, yes, this is comment, more like a comment. So, and then the question. Thank you for the very insightful discussion. We have been talking about the top-down approach, particularly the vision from the top. I'm interested in the labor aspect you were discussing. Now we are in the globalized world. There is a great momentum of new world of labor. What should Cambodia do to retain and attract the labor to align with that vision from the top, as well as to make sure that they are ready for the vision? Okay, this is first question. And now the COVID-19 pandemic seems to pressure Cambodian workers abroad to return home. What are your opinions on this? Thank you. Now, so may I pose this question to first of all to Dr. Kim Long? Yeah, Dr. Kim Long.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this question. Let me start by saying that, sending off Cambodian workers to work abroad is nothing bad. It's nothing wrong. And this has been done in many countries and by many countries. It is just like the global trend. And we have seen, for example, Vietnam has also done that. Malaysian people, Filipino people, and in Latin America, for example, and on a larger scale, and to be short, we cannot say that as a negative sign, but in fact, it is the emerging trend that the world is reintegrating itself through the flows of migrant workers. And along that line, there are positive benefits coming out of it. It's the exchange of information, of experience. Workers depend on the sector where people go to work, and depend on the extent to which they are engaging to learn and then to improve their skill and experience from the work overseas. But coming back to the questions, what are some of the strategy or what can be done to attract them back? It's a long way to go. It's a long way to go, for economic reason. Migrant workers migrate to, just for employment in other countries because there are economic benefits from there. There are higher pay, higher salary, and also opportunity to learn, to upgrade their skill and knowledge, to integrate themselves in those international, kind of society. And after 10 years, after 5 years, they come back, and then we can mobilize all of them or some of them just to for some purpose, a pool of return migrants worker from overseas, and to join the Cambodian society in promote certain kind of SME, certain kind of industrial or service sectors. To attract them, I do not have any exact ideas, but I can suggest a very simple, a very humble approach. And the humble approach is not easy anyway, unless we, as a as a country, promote, develop, build our economy on all the sectors, on all the area that we have been discussing today, improving, investment, climate, attract, improve entrepreneurship, domestic and international, international investors to the country, promote private sectors, improve all of those business registration, for example, including custom clearance, all of those, in the policy as well as the implementation of those, just to grow the private sector. when the Cambodian private sector is growing, growing in a very healthy, in a very resilient, in a very inclusive way, the wage rate in Cambodia and then the labor market will be expanding, and then there could be some area, some potential to draw them back, to bring them back. Maybe 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 8 years, 10 years, who knows that, But first, we need political stability. We need social stability in the country. We need a very good, investment climate. I mean, investment climate in terms of governance, implementation, predictability in terms of rule of laws, and importantly, linking to that digital technology platform again. Some of them can come back, and then when they learn, they upgrade their skill in some sectors, and then they get reskilled in some way, they can become entrepreneur, on their own. There are example, there are some migrant, some returnee Cambodian migrant workers coming back to Cambodia, and then they have their own business, their own micro, small business. Some of them is not even micro, they become even a multi-million-dollar business tycoon in the country already. So this is the spillover effects. But to sum up, there are pros and cons, and then we cannot stop the trend. Let's say now, because now we have to say now they have the freedom of movement, freedom of migrating to find works elsewhere in the country that really need labor, cheap, lower cost labors than their own. Let them do it while Cambodia is building up itself. Let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, our society, economy, all part that we combine as an eclectic approach or a holistic approach of the government intervention with the participation from private sector and society itself is prospering. Cambodia will be very attractive. They will come back sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim Long. Yeah, I hope you also one of the we call billionaires who graduate overseas and bring back this money to develop other countries as well. Yeah, hopefully. Now I think the same question goes to, I think, the other panelists. So you would like to share with us with the same question. Would you like to answer this question, or would you like me to repeat the question? I think, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yes, I think I just want to add quickly on Dr. Cheng. I think I agree with all he has mentioned. I think that, and I'm very pleased to hear that he also agrees that startup, we call that now self-entrepreneurs, and now you have a new trend, which is digital entrepreneur. And this is not only in Cambodia. I think the crisis has been an accelerator to the fourth industrial revolution. And also, if you look at the ecosystem, I think that startup entrepreneurs, it's a backbone of Southeast Asia. I think it represents 19.5% in Southeast Asia. So I think that there is, and also looking at the demographics, there is a very strong potential within that a startup who should promote their mission, their goal to perhaps contribute indeed of the development of the country to attract talent from overseas. I think that this is the first point. I think the second point is that we need also to be realistic in that approach, that it will take times. I think that now indeed we have the development of the vaccine, but it will take time because we need also to implement, I think, the right infrastructures for the vaccine development, and also the post COVID era which take sometimes both on the tourism recovery, but obviously also on the labor recovery, because government sectors has been really affected, and also if you speak about gender, I think that there is 85% of women in the government sector. So this is also something we should take in considerations. But I think that more so than reskill, I think that we can also upskills people with all that new. I think new positions will be really focused on digital. I think that now a lot of people, young talent, I'm speaking now about Hong Kong, which I seen in Hong Kong, many people has been hired very quickly, the one who have competencies within all the e-commerce, digital marketing, all that new skills are really on demand. And I think that this is something within, I think, ecosystem, within, I think, e-training and regional collaboration, we can maybe leverage this need to really bring something new for the students and entrepreneurs to really inspire others.
Thank you, Indra. Mr. Beresford, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on the labor migrant and returning migrant issue. I mean, first of all, there's an immediate need to help people, because suddenly they've seen a very large decrease in their income because they're not able to engage in that activity. So, and I think governments responded well to that. So that's the first aspect. But the other bit, and it picks up on also Mr. Navindra's point about the investments in the skill sets, and to a certain extent, and it's a very sad thing to say, but sometimes I think that there is a logical argument about why kids drop out of high school and go off and earn cash. I'm talking particularly in normal times, not before COVID maybe. But there's a logical argument because sometimes I think one of the structural problems that we have within, the TVET, the skills and so on is this gap between the high school and then these IT, digital and other skills, and how you can bridge them. And I think for middle class kids and for more prosperous kids, that's okay. It's not such a problem. This Royal School of Phnom Penh, there's some good universities, there's some good courses out there. It's much more difficult for ordinary kids, for working class kids. And if you think about a history of a country such as where I'm from Europe, and I think about the story of my father or my grandfather and what happened in our country as we went through an industrial change, an industrial process, and we moved into services, say, and then, communities that had been reliant on manufacturing and manual labor jobs moved more into, into services or managerial roles. What was available then was, very affordable and very, very good quality mezzanine skills that you could get into, and it made sense to do well at school and to finish your high school and get your diploma, because that would get you into one of these courses. Into one of those courses, that got you into, the beginnings of a management track, a beginning of a service industry, a job with dignity, a job that had a career prospect to it. It wasn't just working in a factory, printing T-shirts or something. And this is the bit I think that this also needs a lot of focus on here in Cambodia. At UNDP, we're working with Ministry of Economy and Finance and KIPFA, which is a local accounting body here, to make an easily obtainable but high quality accounting certificate. Many of the people I talk to in chambers of commerce and businesses tell me about, not only is it, for instance, I can't get good IT people, but I can't get good finance people. And often people come to with some qualification from this or that other college, but they actually don't know basic accounting. They're not able to do, and we wanted to come into that gap and really help on the certification bit. And I think more work is needed there to build up professional bodies, to build up that offer the skill sets, but also ensure the quality as well, so that the person taking the course is investing their time and money well, but then also the employer can trust the brand, they can trust the certificate. It does actually indicate that this person has, the right skills. I think we're fine at the top end. So if you look at the very you know, the top end of finance and the law and so on and so forth, that's not a problem. But I think for the ordinary people, you know, like the entry level skill bit, that's the bit that we need. And it comes back to the migration story, because then at that point, then I think then we're offering a better deal then for a young Cambodian entrant to the labor market, because then he or she might think, actually, rather than go to Thailand and work on a building site, a hotel or something, actually staying here and actually getting into one of these careers actually is better for me, you know, like, you know, and that I think is the opportunity for investment.
Thank you, Mr. Beresford. Dr. Sokhay, you have any more input into the discussions, into the same questions? Dr. Sokhay?
Yep. Actually, I do not have any further input, because a main point has been raised by the speaker already. But now I would like to, I saw questions from Joseph about, beside fintechs, what about development of logistic hub and data center?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think those areas are important, and we are moving toward that. And as I mentioned before about infrastructure, so I talk about telecommunication infrastructure. And beside that, physical infrastructure is important, right? So in order to have a logistic hub, and then we need good road, good infrastructure. I think our seaport has been significantly improved, and now we need more better road. So we need highway, and I think there has been several highway being constructed. So I think we are moving toward that logistic hub. In terms of data center, cloud computing, so I think this area once again need a good infrastructure too, telecommunication. And another point is the skill. And I think previous speaker already mentioned about skill in IT, skill in telecommunication, which is important, because in order to have a data, to be a good data center, we need a good infrastructure on internet. And if the speed is fast, and if we have enough qualified people, and yeah, we will be able to help that. So it may take maybe in the short run sometimes in order to have those appear, but I think now we are on the right track in terms of developing a good infrastructure, not just only physical but also telecommunication. That's what I want to answer the question.
May I add something also on with Dr. Sokhang? I think that I also completely agree that one of the limitations to build data centers and have an efficient, effective logistic hub is obviously infrastructures, sufficient infrastructure to support all this implementation. But I think that also another limitations we also discussed about that is internet coverage, but ahead of that, I think that we also need to anticipate within the next decade also cyber security threats. I think that this is something, you know, sadly or not, the new challenge, more than environmental challenge. We will have a cyber security, I think, threats, and I think that from now, I think that people from private to government also has been aware in different countries to really anticipate this, because with accelerations of the 5G, with the implementation of different technologies, you know, AI. I think that AI also has been implemented with the agricultural sectors in Cambodia. So this is also a new advancement for innovations. But more than AI, now also you have all the health tech, but also ed tech in the educations. You know, many people in AR, they are using these tools for education. I've seen that recently with a startup which is doing very well in Myanmar. Sadly, Myanmar now have different challenges, but before she shared with me that this model has been also exported in other countries. So all the startup and entrepreneurs who go toward that direction, I think, yes, this is something we can anticipate, is really all the cyber crime and cyber security should be really accelerated and emphasized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ravindra. I think there are no more questions from the audiences, so I think I will pose you perhaps the last questions uh, to all panelists. So, in my observations, the many Cambodian students who graduate, maybe they try to get some kind, yeah, to get the degree, say bachelor degree, so on and so forth. So they seem to ignore the actual, like certificate or the actual diploma, whose, whose job mainly deal with the entry level job. Say, okay, uh, engineering or electricities, or sometimes the fixing the air conditioners, or say the fixing the car mechanic. They ignore this kind of the entry levels jobs. So what do you think, what are the best way to convince the young generation of Cambodia, to you know to upgrade, or to in other words to recognize this kind of skill, or to get at least to convince them to get into this kind of market, to accept this kind of jobs. So what do you think? I ask to all of you. So who wish to take the floor first? uh, okay, so if not, I will ask. Okay, Mr. Beresford, please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll be brave enough or foolish enough to go first. So, yes, it's a very good question, and a very relevant question. Particularly as we've mentioned, a very young country still. So, this is a strength that Cambodia has. So it's important then about encouraging young people to stay in school, but then also to go into courses that give them the skills that employers need. Skills that will give them jobs with dignity, careers with a good future. One aspect I'd like to emphasize is that we have International Women's Day is on the 8th of March, and we'll be introducing a report then that looks at the wage gap, the gender wage gap. And it's a sneak preview. We estimate that in 2014 to 17, women earned about a quarter less than men on average. We're going to update it for the new CSES, but I don't think that figure is going to change dramatically. That's a huge imbalance in your labor markets. That's a huge imbalance in terms of attracting skills, of getting kids to stay in school, and it means that it's like going into a fight with one of your hands tied behind your back. You want everybody involved in this, in terms of skill sets and getting people into the right courses. So I think there's a very important question to be asked there about how do we make courses and how do we make these opportunities available, but particularly for women and girls, because that's, I think, where there's a stronger opportunity. I also emphasize that I say this not just for the benefit of women and girls, but for the benefit of boys and men too, and I note that there aren't any women on our panel today, but I think that all of us benefit from a more balanced and a more inclusive investments in skills and productive economy. So I think that part of the actual way to get more kids and to get more students involved in staying on at school and getting into the tertiary sector also let's have a look at that aspect of it, because I think that's something that where all of us could win. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your interesting answer to this, Mr. Breswat. So, how about other panelists? You want to contribute, or you have any things to add more into what Mr. Breswat just said? So, okay, so let's move. Oh, I think we have the last questions here from Tuchichita. She asked that I would like to ask the panelists about the awareness and the usage of general public for e-commerce ecosystem. I think I don't quite understand the question, but I think she may know. She may would like our panelists to elaborate about the general understanding or general public awareness about e-commerce ecosystem. So I think Mr. Ravindra or Dr. Sokhay, you have any ideas about how to answer this question?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, sorry to jump in before, but I think I have also some doubt on the question. Is that she want to understand which sectors on e-commerce, or how the usage means in kind of frequency, daily usage, or I try to understand, but I think that the usage of general public for e-commerce ecosystem, I mean, especially during that time of crisis, has been really ramp up in Cambodia, and not only in Cambodia, also in the regional overview. I think that e-commerce has been really like both from grocery. I've seen also different startup and in the entrepreneurial sectors in Cambodia, grocery, but also all the logistic. I think a startup, I think, has been really deployed, but I think within the ecosystem, perhaps Dr. Sokhan can add more about this fact, but I think that again, the ecosystem has been quite recently supported in Cambodia. I think that there is a real will and efforts from both government, private sectors to really accelerate that ecosystem of entrepreneurs. And I think that because first of the use using digital technologies, I think business and tech startup will be very close within the next decade. So I think that that's mainly my answer to this question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. So I'm not quite really sure with the questions, but perhaps she would like to know about the platforms, probably like using apps, because in this e-commerce ecosystem, apps information is really important. That I think this day with the mobile phone, so people get information very quickly. So, but it is important to raise the awareness. For example, earlier we talked about how do we promote about the vocational work, how do like, for example, graduate, and then we persuade them into the kind of a vocational job, for example, fixing air conditioner, or probably repairs cars. I think because probably after graduation, they do not know what they should do, and their only choice is to go to university. But at the same time, they didn't realize that the demand in the market is quite high for that kind of career, and they do not have any information. So I think linking to this, one way that we can use technology to promote this is the information sharing, especially they do not miss anything. They have the guidance, and I think many organizations have developed apps, and then this app will provide information, or probably a ministry may have information that So the skill needs for this year, for next year, and then these are information, and the same thing into the e-commerce system. So I think awareness is important, right? And the usage, people are aware of that, but they have never used it, and it's nothing. And at the same time, I heard that the government have developed platforms for example, business registration, and now it's more convenient because they do not need to go to the office to register, and they can do it online, and approval is also online, and it's easy. But the thing is that people need to be aware of this platform, that it's available there. All right, so if people do not know, and then they have never used it, they do not realize how useful it is. Like earlier, Mr. Beresford said, I didn't mention Bakong here. All right, I know that it has just been launched, and people may have heard of it, but they are not aware what is that Bakong, what is that used for. First, they need to aware of it, get more information about that, and then they need the apps, they download the apps, and then they need to use it. And when they are familiar with it, they know how useful it is. Yeah, so taking this time, maybe let me briefly 2 minutes for what is Bakong. So yeah, so Bakong is a kind of a blockchain technology that helped the payment service to connect to each other, one another. I say, let me give an example. If I am using one of the apps, let's say PayPay, and I want to transfer money from PayPay to, for example, Wing, or maybe to the bank, probably I need to withdraw money from PayPay, and then I need to go to the bank. But through Bakong, this will help because we can transfer, we can transfer money, let's say a simple example, across institution. So from one bank to another bank easily, from one bank to the other payment service provider easily. That's how it is. And it is important that people first aware of this and use this and see how useful it is. And it saves a lot of time, and yes, it's very convenient and effective. Yes, thank you. It's not an advertising, but so just want to raise the awareness of what has been there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sokhang. I think this is my first time to hear about Bakong too. Without you mentioning today, I think I wouldn't have known it, what Bakong is about. This is very important. That's why, like you mentioned, the public awareness is important, right? So thank you so much for all of the interesting discussion today. And now we have come to an end of this today panel discussion. I think I myself and also the others online participants are very pleased and very happy, I believe, to listen to your very interesting discussion on Cambodia Economic Outlook 2021. And once again, on behalf of AVI, I would like to appreciate all of you for spending your valuable time sharing with us your opinions and views regarding the Cambodia economic performance in 2021, as well as the what sectors that Cambodian government as well as the private sector should look into this year and beyond. So the online participant and myself would like to express the congratulations to all of you for doing a very job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Say goodbye. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.